Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of My Favorite Things. On my channel, I've only talked about movies so far, even though I always advertise it as movies and video games. Well, this week is gonna be my first episode where I talk about video games. Finally! My main problem with video games so far has been keeping the topic relevant, but it just so happens that there's a new Uncharted game coming out this month, so here we are. Can you believe that the first Uncharted game came out 10 years ago already? It's crazy. When I first played Uncharted Drake's Fortune on my brand spankin' new PS3, I knew it was something special. And the series only got better with each new installment. Except number 4. Still good, but not necessarily worthy of a My Favorite Things episode. So let's unlock the treasure chest that is the Uncharted series and see why it's one of my favorite things. The stories of the Uncharted games are very similar to what you'd see in an Indiana Jones movie. And before I go any further, that itself is a great thing about the games themselves. They really trigger that sense of nostalgia for those movies, but they also take what we know and love and put their own brilliant twist to it, giving us new characters, exciting treasures, brilliant action set pieces, and unique environments. So the stories are what you'd expect from a story about treasure hunters. Nathan Drake, a descendant of Sir Francis Drake, tries to follow in the steps of other great explorers who hid their treasures hundreds of years ago. The first great prize is El Dorado in Uncharted Drake's Fortune. In the sequel, Among Thieves, the search is for the lost city of Shambhala, also known as Shangri-La, in the Himalayas. The third game, Drake's Deception, is about finding the Atlantis of the Sands, somewhere in the middle of the Rubakali Desert. Each story is complete with betrayal, loss, destruction, and deadly curses. Nate and his partners fight off pirates, warlords, secret agents, zombies, giant blue men, and Ghost Rider things. Of course, when there's a treasure worth millions, Nate's not the only one searching. There are plenty of fun villains to compete against. All these different elements make every adventure with Nate feel so epic. The game puts you right alongside with these treasure hunters going on these crazy journeys with interesting twists and turns, and you walk away feeling like you've actually learned a lot about history, explorers, and lost civilizations. The characters are definitely one of the best things about this series. The character that you play as is Nathan Drake. I made a comparison between him and Flynn Rider in Tangled a few episodes ago. They're both smart, quippy, adventurous thieves. Nate's sense of humor and threatening situations really tells a lot about his character. He doesn't tend to dwell on the seriousness of the circumstances that he's in. He could die at any moment, but alleviates the stress by telling jokes. Nate's also very competitive. Many times he refuses to turn back and allow the villains to get away with the treasure. Even when he's made it to safety and can just go home, he doesn't. Nate constantly puts his life on the line. He always wants to beat the antagonists, not just because of seeking a fortune, but also to prove himself worthy of the Drake name. He always prides himself as being a descendant of Sir Francis Drake. Drake was an English privateer, sea captain, and vice admiral. He was the second man to circumnavigate the globe, brought the Spanish Armada to its knees, helped establish England as the greatest naval power until the mid-1900s, and was knighted by Queen Elizabeth in 1581. Those are some big shoes to fill. The only thing is, Sir Francis Drake didn't have any children. Whenever anyone brings this fact up, Nate quickly brushes it off by saying stuff like, history can be wrong, and he just didn't have children with his wife in England. But how can Nate be sure that he's Drake's descendant? Did Drake have children with a Native American or something? And if so, how would he be able to track his heritage that far back? You know what I think? I think he's lying. Not just lying to others, but lying to himself. Nate's repeated this to himself for so long that he's actually begun to believe it. It's a way for him to identify with his love of history and motivation to learn and explore more and maybe someday be as great as his idol. Nate keeps Francis Drake's ring that he stole from a museum. On it is inscribed the Latin phrase Sic Parvis Magna, meaning greatness from small beginnings. Nate tries to live up to that phrase. As a child, he was left in a Catholic boarding school after his mother died. Despising the nuns, he ran away and lived as a petty thief on the streets of Colombia until he met Victor Sullivan. So this phrase, sic parvis magna, gives him hope that he can achieve greatness even though he's had very humble beginnings. Sully is Nate's longtime friend who mentored and practically raised him. Nate was only 13 when they met after Sully saved his life from Uncharted 3's antagonist, Catherine Marlowe. He's not interested in history as much as Nate. He cares more about the score. Sully is really the only family Nate ever had, and you can really see their bond throughout the games. Just through their character interactions, you can tell how close the two are, and you don't even learn their backstory until the third game. Also, Sully comes in handy with a light source because he's a smoker. The third main character in the series is Nate's on and off love interest, Elena Fisher. She's a reporter who investigates historic stories around the globe, hoping to get her big hit. The two meet in the first game when Elena's reporting Nate's search for the corpse of Sir Francis Drake, until he found Drake's journal, leaving clues about El Dorado. What's great about Elena is that she isn't just some girl for Nate to save and then mac on later. She's very smart and resourceful. Elena even gets in on a lot of the action, helping Nate in gunfights. She even smuggles Nate and Sully into Yemen. The side characters are really good too. One of them, Chloe Fraser, is one of Nate's girlfriends. She's introduced in Uncharted 2 and keeps taking different sides. She helps both Nate and his rival Harry Flynn. She also makes an appearance in the first third of Uncharted 3, but strictly as one of Nate's treasure hunting partners. Chloe comes across as much more of a thrill seeker and more tenacious than Elena. There's also Charlie Cutter in Uncharted 3. He's the strongest and toughest of the bunch, being handy in a fight. After getting drugged, he reveals that he's tired of following Nate around and taking orders. Again, he was drugged, but that seems like something that he keeps suppressed deep inside. Charlie also has a funny running joke about being claustrophobic, so whenever he's in a tight space, he tries to keep himself calm.
Come on. Really? Come on, Charlie, what's the holdup?
Yeah. All right. Oh, it'll all be over soon. It'll all be over soon. That's it. Oh, that wasn't too bad.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Nothing, I'm fine.
Each of the characters in the Uncharted games are fantastic. Nathan Drake is a great lead, and all his partners are really good too. Each of the characters are explored very well. The villains in the Uncharted series are pretty good too. Though they're never as great or memorable as the protagonists, they're still pretty well done. Each game has multiple antagonists, and they get better as the series progresses. Uncharted Drake's Fortune has Eddie Raja, Atok Navarro, and Gabriel Roman as its villains. Eddie is a pirate leader who's had a rough history with Nate and is seeking revenge as Nate is pinned down on an island under his control. Eddie provides his men to assist Roman, who is searching for El Dorado on this island. Promised a cut if Nate is killed, Eddie sends waves of men to fight. Roman, like Nate, is also a treasure hunter, one who Sully owes a lot of money to. He presents himself in a very civil manner, unlike Eddie who's loud and bombastic. Navarro is very behind the scenes, not doing much besides standing by Roman's side. Roman brought him in off the streets at a young age to work together, kind of like Nate and Sully. He betrays his mentor and takes the statue of El Dorado for himself to sell its zombie-turning curse to the highest bidder. A staple of Uncharted games is having crazy monsters to fight at the end. The end of Drake's Fortune reveals zombie-like creatures who are the result of cursed Nazi explorers. Fighting them is extremely tense and stressful. The sequel, Among Thieves, has Nate's former partner Harry Flynn and warlord Zoran Lazarevic as the main antagonists. Flynn gets a fantastic opening where he's working with Nate to find Marco Polo's map in a museum, and then betrays Nate and keeps the map for himself. Lazarevic is probably the most ruthless villain in the series. Not that everyone else is squeaky clean, but this guy is leading a militia group and destroying Nepal searching for Shambhala. Lazarevic wants the power of the Chintamani stone hidden in the lost city to take over the world. He also gets a really good boss fight at the end of the game. Like the first game, there are more crazy monsters to fight. Protecting Shangri-La are giant monstrous blue men who dress up like yetis to scare away invaders. They are much tougher than the previous monsters. Like I said before, Uncharted 3 has the best villains. They're part of an evil British secret organization. Before meeting Nate, Sully was doing a job for them, stealing Sir Francis Drake's ring. Nate just got it first. It's not thoroughly explained, but Sully also had some sort of relationship with the main villain, Catherine Marlowe. Of course, their personal and business relationship ended when Sully betrayed them to save Nate. Marlowe's been resenting the two for 20 years since. The other villain is her assistant Talbot. He does most of the dirty work as Marlowe watches from behind the scenes, so the villains do keep getting better as the series progresses. This is the first time I actually get to talk about gameplay in a video. Throughout the Uncharted trilogy, there are three main types of gameplay. The first is the shoot 'em up kind. You fight waves and waves of soldiers sent by the villains, and also all the crazy monsters you find towards the end of each game. Like a lot of shooters, the player is allowed to carry one long gun and one handgun at a time, along with grenades. Uncharted is also a platformer. Nathan Drake has to make a lot of insane jumps and swings to make his way across the environment. Each game is full of climbing, swinging, and jumping. My favorite part about this are some of the hilarious deaths that happen when you fail and a well-timed blood-curdling scream just before. The last portion of the gameplay is the puzzle solving. Of course, in a game about treasure hunting and lost civilizations, there would be a lot of puzzles to figure out as we piece the clues together. Nate always has a journal from an explorer that provides the key to each puzzle. I like their difficulty. None of them are so hard that you have to look them up online to find the answer, but they're not too easy either. Maybe the first puzzle just to give the players a sense of how to solve them, but besides that, you don't breeze through them. Some portions of the game mix some of the gameplay elements. A couple of times, you'll be fighting and platforming at the same time, leading to really cool action set pieces, like in Uncharted 3, when you're fighting enemies on the top of a tower in Syria as you're climbing up the tower, and in Uncharted 2, when you're trying to get across a moving train while fighting enemies. Most of the puzzles actually require Nate's spider monkey climbing abilities too. Probably what will stand out the most in the Uncharted games are the astonishing action sequences. There are so many memorable scenes, like fighting the pirates at the very start, the first zombie scene, the stealth sequence at the beginning of Among Thieves, the train fight, surviving the train wreckage, escaping the sinking cruise ship, and of course, the airplane part of Uncharted 3. It's funny how this is already the third train fight I've mentioned in my videos. Uncharted 2 begins around the 2/3 mark of the game, when Nathan Drake is wounded in a train dangling off a cliff in the Himalayas. Then much of the game is a flashback showing how Nate got to that spot. It was an amazing opening. Playing an Uncharted game literally feels like playing a movie because there are so many large cinematic set pieces. Making an Uncharted movie would basically just be taking some of the cutscenes and tossing them together. Also, something important to any series is improving and adding more content as it goes on, and this trilogy does that perfectly. Uncharted 2 polished a lot of the gameplay mechanics by removing the motion controls, which weren't that good, and putting more emphasis on the stealth aspect of fighting. Uncharted 3 improved further by adding a refined melee combat system and the ability to catch grenades and toss them back. Small differences like these make a large difference in the gameplay. So overall, the Uncharted trilogy has fantastic gameplay that only gets better with each game. Anyone who's played an Uncharted game knows exactly what it's like to begin the adventure. Whenever you open the game, it kicks off playing this absolutely brilliant soundtrack. Nate's theme is easily one of the best scores in all of gaming. It perfectly sets the tone for the rest of the game, a fun and thrilling adventure. So the game's soundtrack is remarkable. One of the multiple reasons why Uncharted 4 isn't included in this video is because Nate's theme is mysteriously missing. I have no idea why, but whoever thought it was a good idea to remove it should have been fired immediately from Naughty Dog. What's also great about each Uncharted installment are the visuals. Each game had groundbreaking graphics, and even though they look outdated now, for their time they were among the best in the industry. There are so many moments in these games that are just pure eye candy. You get glimpses of vast jungles, snowy mountains, large cities, and endless desert. Even though the trilogy's most recent game is already 6 years old, some of the landscapes still look gorgeous. One last thing that I should mention is the great voice acting. Nolan North is among the best voice actors in gaming, and his talent really shows here, being the voice of Nathan Drake. And man, I hope I pronounce this right. Richard McGonagall, who plays Sully, also has a great voice. So, overall, there's a lot to like about the Uncharted trilogy. Although I love these games, there are a few minor problems that I have. Nothing too big, of course, because if so, then I wouldn't be making this episode. Like I said before, there are 3 different types of gameplay throughout each game: shooting, platforming, and puzzle solving. I feel that sometimes there's a bit too much of the shooting aspect, mostly in the first game, but somewhat in the others too. In some parts, you're just fighting wave after wave of enemies, and it gets to the point where you really just want the plot to move on already. This is the same problem I have with another Naughty Dog game, The Last of Us. There's too much gunning to the point where the game begins to drag. Another thing is that even though the villains do their part, nobody in particular stands out. Not that they're bad, they're just not that memorable. Resident Evil 3's Nemesis, petrifying. Infamous's Kessler, awesome. Arkham Asylum's Joker, pure genius. Uncharted 3's Kathleen Marlowe, okay. My last nitpick isn't something that's necessarily in the games, but what's not mentioned. Elena and Drake get together at the end of each game. And although they're married by Uncharted 4, they keep breaking up in between games. Why they broke up between 1 and 2, I don't know. Why they broke up between 2 and 3, never mentioned. So those are all my problems with the Uncharted trilogy. Good thing I didn't include Uncharted 4, because this part would have been a lot longer. Thankfully, there's nothing too big to complain about. The Uncharted franchise has always been one of my absolute favorites in gaming. There's just so much to admire about these games. The characters are really well explored and quite hysterical sometimes. The visuals are stunning. You explore so many different environments, and each of them are rendered beautifully. The gameplay is awesome. Each game feels extremely cinematic, like you're playing a great movie. Every adventure with Nate is tons of fun, and the voice acting is top notch. There are a few pieces that don't really work. The villains are kind of forgettable, the fighting occasionally drags on, and the on and off romance goes completely unexplained. These small problems don't hold the games back that much though. If anyone just picks up a copy of the Uncharted series, then they will easily see why the Uncharted trilogy is one of my favorite things.